Hello everyone, it's Foo here, and today I wanted to talk to you about a little bit of a missed opportunity in the Indigo Disc DLC. Now, you know that I'm a Hydrapple enjoyer. My previous video was a very fun team featuring Hydrapple and a skill swap Magmar contrary strategy, so if you haven't checked that out, definitely do that. But what it didn't feature is Hydrapple's signature move, Fickle Beam, which is a base 80 power dragon type move that has a 30% chance to do double damage, being 160 power, which is extremely strong. That's significantly stronger than even Draco Meteor and doesn't come with a downside of a special attack drop. So it's a really cool move. And before I put together the contrary Hydrapple team, I was looking into whether there was any way to boost the chance of Fickle Beam becoming an all-out attack with that double damage. So I considered giving Hydrapple the Serene Grace ability. This doubles the chance of activation of secondary move effects. That will give Fickle Beam a 60% chance to do double damage at 160 power, which is mind-blowing. But before I made the team, I wanted to test whether it worked in-game. So what I did was use Skill Swap Serene Grace Blissey next to Hydrapple, gave Hydrapple the Serene Grace ability, and used Fickle Beam 25 times to see how often it activated with the all-out attack. Of the 25 times that I used it, it became an all-out attack only 6 times, which would equate to less than a 25% activation chance. Now, 25 Fickle Beams isn't actually a huge sample size, so this looks like it was really using that 30% activation chance for the all-out attack. I just got slightly unlucky, but it definitely doesn't look like this doubles the chance of Fickle Beam activating. Otherwise, we would expect to see over 12 all-out attack activations, or at least nearer that number, which is definitely not what we saw. And this is corroborated by other people's experiences on the Smogon testing forum. And that means that we miss out on some potentially really cool strategies. So I want to show you the team that I would have planned to use if this worked, so that you kind of get the idea of how cool a team we could have been working with here. Now, I haven't made it in game because obviously it would have been a waste of time and resources, so this is on the Showdown Simulator. The first set is obviously the Hydrapple. It's basically a similar set to what I was using in my last video, apart from with Fickle Beam over Draco Meteor and Energy Ball over Leaf Storm. It's a strong Trick Room sweeper. I've got the Dragon Fang there, so Fickle Beam is doing as much damage as possible. And then Energy Ball is there as secondary stab, but it would also have a 20% activation chance to reduce the opponent's special defense if it got the Serene Grace ability. And similarly with Earth Power, which is a really nice coverage move, that also has a chance to lower the opponent's special defense by 1 stage, and Serene Grace would boost the activation chance for that from 10% to 20%. So that will be a really nice set. And I'm also running Super Sweet Syrup on the Hydrapple because with my Blissey, obviously you go for skill swap, and like in my contrary Magmar video, you would get double activation of Super Sweet Syrup, so the opponent's evasion would drop by 2 stages. That means that my Blissey would then have very accurate Sings, like Magmar's Hypnosis in my previous video. Sing, it doesn't quite become 100%. Hypnosis becomes 100% accurate with 2 evasion drops on the opponent. Sing becomes 92% around there, which is still extremely accurate. So you'd be hitting most of your Sings, so Blissey would turn into a very good supporting Pokemon. And then I've just put Ice Beam on there because you can potentially get more freezes before you skill swap Serene Grace, and then Heal Pulse is a very good supporting move. The rest of the Pokemon on the team I wanted to bring as supporting Pokemon for this combo, but also as secondary recipients for Serene Grace if I wanted to go for a different mode. So the first Pokemon I want to show off is Metagross, which is newly added back in the Indigo Disc DLC. It has a clear body ability, so it can be immune to Intimidate on the first turn, and then when you skill swap, it can have that Serene Grace, and its Meteor Mash attack will benefit from that because it's a very powerful steel type move and it has a 20% chance to boost your attack by 1 stage. That becomes a 40% chance with the Serene Grace ability. So this thing could start to power itself up quite easily with those Meteor Mashes. Alternatively, you could run Iron Head, which has a 30% chance to flinch the opponent if you move before them, obviously, and that turns into a 60% chance with the Serene Grace ability. I put Psychic Fangs on here because that is a buff Metagross received. It's a very strong Psychic type move. But again, you could alternatively run Zen Headbutt, which has a 20% chance to flinch the opponent, becomes a 40% chance to flinch the opponent, which is very strong. but you can miss Zen Headbutt, so that's just a bit of a risk. And the last move I've put as knockoff, this has to be a coverage move. Alternatively, you could use Terra Blast Fire or Stomping Tantrum. Those are all options. And so this is kind of a secondary sweeper if you don't want to go the Hydrapple mode. The next Pokemon is Suicune, which is really, really nice type synergy for what we've got so far. It's a Tailwind setter with the Inner Focus ability, so it can't be flinched with Fake Out. So that's really, really nice. And obviously it can be a very good Serene Grace recipient because it has Scald still, which has a 30% burn chance, which turns to a 60% burn chance with Serene Grace, which is nasty and can really neuter any physical attackers on the opposing team. Ice Beam's here just for some nice coverage for grass types, but also because you can get a 20% freeze chance, which is pretty nice. And all in all, Suicune can very much help the team. Next, we've got a really cool Pokemon in Magmar that was brought back in the Indigo Disc DLC. Magmar can hold the Eviolite, but most importantly, it gets the Follow Me move now as a buff. Previously, this was event only and very hard to get your hands on. It's now an egg move, which is fantastic. With Eviolite, Magmar becomes very bulky and can help redirect moves away from your sweepers or your Trick Room users, for example. And why it's a good Serene Grace recipient is because it has the Heat Wave attack, which has a 10% chance to burn the opponent, but because it hits both of the opponents, and with a Serene Grace ability boosting the secondary effect odds, it actually works out to be about a 35% chance for at least one of your opponents to get burned every time you go for a Serene Grace Heat Wave, which is really cool. And then I've got Scorching Sands on here, which is a nice buff for Magmar for two reasons. One, it's a great coverage move. Scorching Sands can 2-hit KO even some very bulky Heatrans, and they won't expect you to have this kind of coverage, so that's really cool. It also has a 30% burn chance on the opponent. That becomes a 60% chance with the Serene Grace ability, so again, another really cool option for this team. And lastly, we have Sinistcha. So this is the Trick Room setter. Magmar can help it set up Trick Room with that Follow Me, so that's really cool. But why it's so great on this team is because Matcha Gotcha has a 20% chance to burn the opponent. With Serene Grace, that becomes 40% chance. And again, this hits both opponents. So if the attack hits both opponents with a 40% burn chance, you end up having about a 75% chance to burn at least one of the opponents, which is very strong. So all in all, this would have been such a cool team to use. Sinistcha there trying to get the Trick Room up so that Hydrapple could sweep with those boosted Fickle Beams under Trick Room, or alternatively having like a Suicune Metagross Tailwind option, with Metagross then being able to boost up with Serene Grace Meteor Mashes. I thought that this was just a really interesting theory team, but unfortunately, because the mainstay of the team would be that Hydrapple with the boosted Fickle Beam, it's just not viable considering that that mechanic doesn't interact the way I hoped it did. So that's why I think this is a big missed opportunity in the Indigo Disc DLC. But don't despair, I have lots of interesting team ideas coming up soon, so stay tuned to the channel for that. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like. I'm on my way to 90,000 subscribers, so if you want more of this kind of content, then definitely subscribe to the channel. All that's left to be said is I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.